who wishes to speak with us today. And that is John Key. So welcome, John. I see you there on Zoom. Can you hear us all right? You're muted. Just unmute yourself, John, and then we can hear you. Bottom left-hand corner, there's a little mute button you need to hit.
I can ask him to unmute, but I don't think I can unmute.
I think we can go up to the 3 dots. Yeah. No function.
Can you not go inside and just unmute over there?
No, I can. No.
John, on the bottom left-hand side of your screen is a mute button. Just up from the bottom, it says mute. It will have a line through it. If you click on that, it will unmute you.
Ask them to hold the space bar down. No, it's
not down there.
No.
Okay.
Helen, ask them to hold the space bar down. It might work.
John, if you hold your space bar down, hold your space bar on your keyboard down, that may also unmute you.
You kill them.
Oh, he's gone completely. Okay, he's gone to get help.
No, this takes us
Yes. Okay, we'll let you, John, sort that out, and we'll move to our next item. So we'll move to 11.2, and so we're on page 20. So welcome to Clint. This seems kind of strange, more than 6 months later adopting our annual report. There's been a number of reasons behind that, and but welcome, Clint. I'll hand it over to you for comment, and also Amanda.
Thank you, Your Worship. Amanda, I don't know if you want to go first.
Unmute, Amanda.
Hey, geez. So yeah, as Your Worship has mentioned, this is unusual due to COVID and resourcing requirements. The normal adoption time is the 31st of October. That was pushed out to the 31st of December by central government. And then due to resourcing restrictions in Audit New Zealand, we agreed to then let it flow into now, which is February. So it is unusual. It's going to be unusual for a wee while. Next year is also had the regulation date changed to be the 31st of December instead of the 31st of October. So central government is clearly signalling that they're very aware that there are issues in the country around this. I glanced back through the report to kind of refresh myself. It was presented to Audit and Risk on the 11th of November, and we talked about it fairly at length at that time. Some of the things we talked about was the fact that it appeared to have quite a large surplus, and on the surface of things, people think that's a lot of money to spend, but it's that's actually reflecting the revenue that we've received to help fund our CapEx spend in a lot of our capital areas. So it looks really positive. It is still a very positive report. We've done some really good things in the levels of service areas, even with the restrictions of COVID that have restricted our numbers in places like the Makino and the library. We've still been able to provide services to the community, even though they were restricted. So it's quite good. From a finance point of view, we're very pleased that this is one of the first reports that I've been involved in where there hasn't actually been any financial changes to the bottom line from what we brought to you. Although Clint had a chat to me about 10 minutes ago and said, oh, there's this minor change that we didn't ask you to change. So I was like, oh, bugger. But yeah, I'm really pleased that actually what we've presented to you from a financial view is actually very much what we're representing. That's probably all I've got to say.
Excellent, thank you, Amanda. Clint?
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, your worship, and thank you, councillors. Yeah, it is unusual times, and as Amanda says, it's going to continue like this for us in the accounting profession. It's not unique to us. You know, every time we turn on the radio, the TV, there's a profession complaining about the lack of skills, and we're feeling that quite significantly. You might be aware that the immigration or the government's allowed 180 spots for auditors to come into the country. Yesterday, I think we interviewed 5, and we've got another 3 that we're trying to interview over the next two days to get all offshore, by the way, to get them into the country. So as that's happening, a lot of our younger people, staff are actually starting to leave. We've got 3 leaving for the UK in the next couple of months. So I'm not sure where all this will end up. But enough said of that. Coming to the audit itself. So councillors, I think the first thing to note here is that, I want to say that the lateness is no reflection of council staff. They've been really supportive throughout the process in terms of providing information, turnaround, response times, etc. So really want to acknowledge and thank management for that, and also councillors for your patience with this matter. A couple of items that I do want to run through that's come out of the audit. The first one is around the rate setting process. So this year, subsequent to the restriking of rates, with that in mind, we did a bit more work than we normally do on the rates process. And one of the things that we've identified is the alignment between the revenue and finance policy, the FIS, and the rates resolution. So we went through that whole process just to check if there is consistencies between the documents. The one matter that we have picked up is with regards to the terminology used in these different documents. So, for example, in your revenue and finance policy, a reference is made to a uniform targeted rate, whereas in the other 2 documents, your FIS and your rates resolution, it talks to a uniform annual charge, UACG. So we're just saying, that discrepancy can create some confusion, and a review. One of our recommendations is it doesn't affect your audit report at all. One of our recommendations is that there's a legal review of all these documents prior to the setting of rates each year. It's a common practice in some other councils. I've seen that where they engage a law firm to come in and just do that high-level QA and legal review and say, yep, you comply with all the legislative requirements. From our perspective, the things that the rates that have been impacted is not material rates numbers. So again, it's not something we've asked to change, but it will certainly be a recommendation from our perspective. The second item relates to the fair value assessment of property, plant, and equipment. So, in my 6 years at council, asset valuations has always been a challenge. Capitalization of assets, council's made tremendous progress in that regard. We getting on top of it. But like with all these things, the world keeps changing under our feet. And one of the things is around when you value the assets that you have on your book. So there's assets that are valued every year, and there are assets that some you value every 3 to 4 years. And again, normal practice. What we have found is where you're not valuing the assets, the accounting standard still requires entities, organizations to do an assessment to say, well, does that fair value represent what's in your books, your carrying value? And the default position is to go and look at indices, put out by stats or sector-specific indices, and apply that. And usually it's within a range, and we're quite happy with it because it's below our materiality. In the last 2 years, however, we've seen that some of those indices are national indices, and they're a bit off the mark when it comes to region-specific scenarios where prices have gone up a lot higher due to a whole host of factors. So what we will be recommending is that as part of the fair value assessments going forward, that council does that early in the year, and I spoke to Amanda about that a few minutes ago, that it happens round about this time of the year, February, March. Look at it, try to see if you've got some internal information around actual costs, just to benchmark it, and that will determine whether you need to do a full valuation or not. What we say, we're not saying that indices are wrong, you know, I'm sure there's a good process at arriving at it. What we're just saying, it needs to be overlaid with some regional specific challenges or cost implications. So that's the second key point that I just want him to raise. The next item is around the audit report itself. So given the government's announcements around the 3 water reforms that they made in October, council's made some significant disclosures around that in the accounts. So it's in your subsequent events note. We've just drawn attention to that in our audit report, because it does create it gives more certainty in one regard, but at another level, also a level of uncertainty in terms of when do those assets transfer, at what value will they transfer, etc. So we've just drawn attention to that in our audit report, and that's standard across all councils in New Zealand. The last thing is around the letter of representation. As Amanda said, there was one minor adjustment for $84,000 that we did not ask council to make because the risk, one, it's not material. Two, it just adds risk to changing the accounts and the knock-on effect. It all relates to the landfill provision and the use of discount rates. So the discount rate used in calculating that land provision was one similar to last year, or was the same one as in 2020. It should have been updated for 2021 discount rate. That didn't happen, and it resulted in an $84,000 difference in terms of decreasing the liability rather than increasing. So that's the only item that we will have on our representation letter that we'll ask the Mayor and CE to sign off on. Those are my only inputs, Your Worship, and happy to take questions from councillors.
Thank you, Clint. We also have the list of the minor changes, the changes that have been made in the final document. So we have those as listed. The one I did look at in the changes was 3.3.5 net borrowings. The reported range was adjusted, but the difference is quite large. Can someone explain that to me?
Amanda, do you want to run through that one?
On page 22 in our agenda, 3.3.5.
Sorry about that, I was just finding it. So the net borrowings range, what that does is it takes into account all of our borrowings that we've had during the year, what the interest rate is that we borrowed at. And I think looking at those numbers, the first reported range, it might have been the historic, might have not been updated from the previous year. So what happened during the audit process is they had a look and went, actually what we've reported based on the actual loans that we'd had during the year is between 0.943 and 5.5. And the very low rate, you'll recall, is because we've got a couple of papers that are on the commercial, they're called commercial papers, so they're short-term rolling papers. So we've purposely done that to take advantage of those very low rates. And we do have a couple of ones right out there that are very historic that are at the higher levels.
Great, thank you. I'll open it up for questions or comments from the team. No, nothing specific in that report. Clint, I just also wondered, given the delays with COVID, etc., and resourcing, etc., is Audit New Zealand taking an opportunity to review what they require as far as auditing, or is there a process to review what you are looking for when you go to councils and the processes, and is there opportunity for input from councils into that review?
Your Worship, yeah, we constantly review our methodology and our risks that we apply to audits, so there's a sector approach that we have, and then that obviously gets tailored for each council. So that is under review, and I think we welcome inputs from clients and happy to take those inputs from either the councillors or management. So yeah, always open to it. I think the one thing I do want to caution, however, is that we have to, there's the minimum we have to do that's required, in terms of the auditing standards, if you like. And then there's a whole lot of extra things that emerge as risks unravel. So, it's always an annual process that we go through. So I can tell you without doubt, next year, the 3 water reforms will be a top priority and a significant risk for us in terms of asset valuations, related borrowings, etc. So that just adds another layer onto the work that we have to do, but then other things obviously drop off at the same time as well. But you're open to suggestions and observations from all interested parties.
Excellent, thank you. Any further? No? Okay. Like I say, it has been some time and things have moved on, but it is the way it is. So we do need to adopt our annual report. So there is a recommendation on page 20. I'm happy to move that the council adopt the annual report for the year ending 30th of June 2021. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Campbell. Thank you. Any further comment? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? The motion is carried. And in doing that, Clint, I just want to say thank you. I understand that your term as our auditor has come to an end. And so I just want to thank you for the way that you have worked with our team, and the explanations you've given us have been fantastic. Always happy to answer questions, etc. And so we appreciate that and wish you well in your next lot of councils that you're working with, and we look forward to our new auditor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to everyone, councillors past and present, and management. Really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. Right, okay, let's go back to item 11.1, and we're on page 14. This is proposed amendments to the Public Places Bylaw. Welcome, John. We've sorted out your mute. Yes, we've got you there.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
I think I've changed devices, so I'm now in a position to be made audible. Thanks.
Okay, so we have your written submission, and
Yep.
you wish to speak to that, so the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, my concern is with regard to the 24/7 extension of the bylaw. I've provided material which I've numbered, which I'll be referring to in my submissions. But before embarking on my formal submissions, I want to raise a concern about the apparent predetermination by your council in respect of the amendment to the bylaws. Now, it could also be a matter of really unfortunate wording, but if you go to the material which I've numbered 1, which is a bylaw review 2021, on the second page, below next steps, it says, Council consulted on amendments to the Public Places Bylaw from 5 November through to 6 December 2021. Following the close of submissions, Council will hold a hearing and adopt the amended Public Places Bylaw in early 2022. So wording is quite clear. You will be adopting, following the submissions, the amended Public Places Bylaw. Now that immediately raises a number of issues. If you have a look at item 2, which is the principles of consultation in the Local Government Act, which I presume is the Bible or the Quran, depending on your religious persuasion for councillors, Section 82(1)(e) says that the views presented to the local authority should be received by the local authority with an open mind and should be given by the local authority in making a decision due consideration. And I've also given you a guide about predetermination put out by the Auditor General, which is a good, adequate rudimentary guide about predetermination. So what we have here is a clear wording in a publication from your council that the amended public places bylaw will be adopted following submissions. If it looks like a duck and it swims like a duck and quacks like a duck, it probably is a duck. If you say you're going to be passing the amended by public places bylaw following submissions, then it seems to me that we've got predetermination here. It may be unfortunate wording, I'm not too sure. Now, the inadequacy of consultation was considered by the High Court just recently in the case of New Zealand Motor Caravan Association Incorporated and the Marlborough District Council. And that judgment issued in December last year. Now, in that case, the applicant said that there was a failure by the council to follow the statutory consultation period procedure under the Local Government Act. Now, the judge in that case agreed with the applicant and said, I propose granting relief by setting aside the adoption of the 2020 bylaws. That means that the bylaws are of no effect and costs are awarded against the council. Now, if anyone considers that I have misinterpreted the publication by council, can they tell me? Otherwise, it seems to me quite clear that no matter what I say, no matter what anyone else says, you're going to be adopting these bylaws. No one disagrees. Well, it appears then to be a sham.
John, we're here today to listen to your submission and hear your points, and then there will be another opportunity for us to consider your comments along with everybody else's submissions. So you said you had another couple of points?
So I take it then that my submissions will be noted and that you haven't already made a decision to adopt these bylaws.
Absolutely.
We're all concerned with regard to having appropriate bylaws and having bylaws that will withstand the scrutiny by a High Court judge in judicial review proceedings. Now, the first thing that I will isolate on is the question of the Bill of Rights Act. And in my written submissions, I've referred you to section 147B of the Local Government Act, which says that, sorry, I'm just giving you the wrong reference. It's section 155(2)B of the Local Government Act says that if a local authority has determined that a bylaw is the most appropriate way of addressing the perceived problem, it must, before making a bylaw, determine whether the proposed bylaw gives rise to any implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. Now, in the statement of proposal, the council has put forward that there are three aspects which possibly impinge on the Bill of Rights Act. That's the freedom of peaceful assembly, the freedom of association, and the freedom of movement. But what the council has not considered is the right against arbitrary arrest or detention and the right of everyone charged with an offence to be presumed innocent. Now, I have provided the council with the report of Chris Finlayson, the Attorney General, under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act on the Alcohol Reform Bill, and that included provision for these alcohol bylaws. If I can perhaps explain it a wee bit, where legislation is introduced to Parliament, where there's a possible breach of the Bill of Rights Act, then the Attorney General is directed to give a report as to whether there's a conflict with the Bill of Rights Act. And here, Chris Finlayson, the then Attorney General, had serious concerns with regard to the alcohol bylaw proposal. If you have a look at the second page of that document, he says, I draw these apparent inconsistencies. The proposal for a power of arrest in respect of an infringement offence appears to be inconsistent with the right against arbitrary arrest or detention under Section 22 of the Bill of Rights Act. Then under Section 2.3, he says, proof that a substance found in an alcohol ban area was not alcohol appears to be inconsistent with the presumption of innocence. The next page in paragraph 4, he expands a wee bit on the right not to be arbitrarily arrested or detained. The power to arrest for an infringement offence raises an issue of inconsistency with Section 22 of the Bill of Rights Act, which provides everyone has the right not to be arbitrarily arrested or detained. And page 3, paragraph 8, a power of arrest for an infringement offence raises an issue of arbitrariness on several counts. Firstly, infringement offences are not sufficiently serious to justify a power to arrest. Secondly, the purpose of the arrest and consequent detention is unclear. And finally, the power of arrest in this context appears to be incompatible with the rights of arrested persons and the usual protections arising from the supervision of the courts. So that is his analysis with regard to the inconsistency of the alcohol bylaws with the power, with the right to be protected against arbitrary arrest or detention. Now, not only is he concerned about that, on page 5, paragraph 19, he says, Section 25C of the Bill of Rights Act affirms the right of everyone charged with an offence to be presumed innocent until proven guilty according to law. The right to be presumed innocent requires a prosecution to prove an accused person's guilt beyond reasonable doubt. A reverse onus provision, which shifts the burden of proof from the prosecution to the accused, infringes the right to be presumption of innocent. Now, that relates to, if you look at 20.2, the onus is on the accused in respect of breach of an alcohol ban to establish that a substance was not alcohol. Now, the reason that I am going through all this is that your counsel is directed by law under Section 1552B to make a determination whether the proposed bylaw gives rise to any implications under the New Zealand Bill of Rights Act. From the information I've been provided, your counsel has not considered, 1, the right against arbitrary arrest or detention, 2, the right of everyone charged with an offence to be presumed innocent. These matters being matters of grave concern to Chris Finlayson when he considered the legislation.
Thanks. Thanks.
No, I'm still going. I'm sorry. Item 5, the Bylaws Act 1910, which says that a bylaw is invalid if it's ultra vires, beyond the powers of the local authority, repugnant to the laws of New Zealand, or unreasonable, or for any other reason whatever, the bylaw shall be invalid to the extent of those provisions and any others which cannot be severed therefrom. So that's the law with regard to invalidity of bylaws. To enable you to make a bylaw regarding an alcohol ban, in this case, we're talking about extending the alcohol ban within the CBD to 24/7, there has to be evidence that the area to which a bylaw applies has experienced a high level of crime or disorder that can be shown to have been caused or made worse by alcohol consumption in the area. Now, the evidence that has been provided is largely anecdotal, and it refers to incidents, whatever incident it may be. There is no evidence that a crime has been committed within the hours we're seeking to extend it to, or disorder that has been resulted in a matter being brought before the courts, and nor has we, if the matter has been brought before the courts, there's no evidence of what the finding of the court was in respect to those matters. So what I'm saying is that the evidence that has been provided doesn't satisfy the criteria in section 147BA. And even if it did, the extension of the bylaw must be shown to be appropriate and proportionate in light of the evidence and can be justified as a reasonable limitation on people's rights and freedoms. So my submission is that so far as the 24/7 extension is concerned, the statutory criteria has not been met. All we have is some anecdotal evidence of incidents, no evidence of a high level of crime or disorder as required by the legislation. Now, you can just bear with me while I gather my notes. The second to last matter that I'm concerned with is regard to the enforcement of the bylaws and the apparent authority given under the bylaws of enforcement and to a council officer. Every person who breaches this bylaw must, upon the request of a council officer, immediately stop the activity and leave the public place concerned, if so requested by the council officer to do so. Now, in my submission, in respect of the alcohol bylaws, there is no statutory basis to enable that matter to be placed in the hands of a council officer. If you have a look at item 7 of the Local Government Act 2002, section 243 of the Act, that says that an enforcement officer in relation to an alcohol ban means a constable. And further down the bottom, the definition in subsection 1 of enforcement officer overrides the definition of that term in section 5. So in my submission, a council officer has got absolutely no legal authority with regard to enforcement of the alcohol bylaws. And if you look at, and this is in the investigations that I've done, this is the view of other councils. Now, I've given you in item 8, an extract from Auckland Council. Now, Auckland Council have gone into alcohol bylaws in some depth, and the information they have provided is particularly useful. On the second page, it says, the New Zealand police are responsible for enforcing alcohol bans and have bounds relating to search, seizure, and arrest under those sections of the Act. In my submission, enforcement officers of the council have got no legal authority to be involved in policing bylaws. And if they were to do so, then they're placing the council and ultimately the ratepayers at financial jeopardy, because a person who had the financial means to challenge a decision of the enforcement officer, in my view, would be successful and would result in a substantial penalty in way of damages imposed on the council. Now, if I can just go through what your proposed amendment results in. If I were to go to the Big Barrel at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to buy a bottle of wine for the purposes of an evening meal, put that in the back of my car on the back seat, get out of my car, then a police constable would come along and say to me, "Sir, I see you're an aficionado of Central Otago Pinot Noirs." And I said, "Oh, yes, I do like a Pinot Noir." He said, "Well, I'm an enforcement officer under the Local Government Act of the alcohol bylaws. And the council has just recently passed a bylaw whereby between the hours of, well, in fact, between all hours, 24/7, you're not allowed to be in possession of alcohol within the central business district, but with some exceptions. They don't apply here, sir. I am going to arrest you." And then along comes an enforcement officer from the council and says, "Not only will you be arrested, sir, you will be banned from the area. I request you to leave the public place concerned." Now, quite how long I'm supposed to leave the public place concerned, I'm not sure. There's no evidence there as to what it is. But I'm assuming that I'm banned completely. And that raises, as I say in my submissions, a clear breach, or an arguable breach anyhow, of clause 29 of the Magna Carta, which applies to New Zealand, which says that no free man shall be outlawed or exiled or any otherwise destroyed. What I'm trying to show to you is that what you're proposing now between the extending the ban to 24/7 is unreasonable. I don't think anyone would argue that my exposure to being arrested and being banned from the area because I had a bottle of wine in the boot of in the backseat of my car is anything but unreasonable. And that, of course, brings into the question of the Bylaws Act as to how a bylaw can be challenged. And one of the bases is that is unreasonable. In brief, my submissions are these. There is one, an apparent predetermination of the issue of the bylaws so that submissions are a sham. Secondly, that the statutory requirement regarding the Bill of Rights Act analysis has not been met, so you have failed on that ground. Thirdly, that the evidence given in support of the bylaw, the evidence that government, Parliament requires you to obtain is severely deficient. It is anecdotal. It doesn't show any crimes being committed in the extended time, nor does it show whether any actions have resulted in criminal offences, and if so, what has happened with those criminal offences. Thirdly, in the scenario that I described, it is quite clear that this bylaw is unreasonable. Why should I be faced with arrest, banning from the central business district area, which I would be under this legislation, under the bylaws, for putting a bottle of wine on my backseat of my vehicle in a CBD while I returned to work before I went home. Fourthly, the provision that an enforcement officer of the council has got any rights with regard to enforcement of the bylaw is wrong. It is contrary to law. If you have a look at what other councils do, the councils say that the enforcement ability is vested in the police, not in council. For those reasons, in my submission, the extension of the bylaw within the CBD to a 24/7 extent is not based on correct legal analysis. You're acting contrary to the Local Government Act, and it should not go ahead. Thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Thank you. You've made your points very clear. So there are a number of points you've made there. They are noted. Thank you for the supporting information you've given us. Today is not about any decision making. It's really to hear your comments. They'll be put into the mix, and then at our next opportunity, we will go through these and discuss them. And I'm sure that in the meantime, our team will check out the points that you've made and come back to council on those. So I thank you for your time, for your submission today, and we wish you all the best for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Right, we move on to, there are no late items. So we can go straight into public excluded. So I'm happy to move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of minutes, delegations update, the Building Civic trustee appointments, and the sale of land, Karakara Road. So I move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ford, thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? That motion is carried. Thank you. Leave us. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Good luck with the wedding. Don't bring any bugs back, please. Right, so this is the opportunity for us to say our formal thanks to David Stroud. So he's going to join us by Zoom, and so are some of the members from the Civic Centre Trust. So we'll just take a minute. There he is. Hi, David. Hi, Ismay. Welcome. Just unmute yourself, please, David. Should be bottom left-hand corner. Mute with a line through it. Click on that one. Right.
Yep. Oh, nearly.
Obviously had it and then he disappeared. Try again. You love technology. So obviously your mute button is not working to unmute, is that right? Not even sure. Can you even hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you?
Perfect, well done.
Yeah.
Technology works.
Bit of a tech here.
Sorry about that, so welcome. I'm not sure if we're expecting, we have invited the other trustees from the Civic Centre Trust to join us. Yes, we've got one coming in now. We do have a couple of apologies, one from John Gregory and one from Johanna Wood.
Okay.
So we'll just got his well gone time. So
Where are you? I don't see you on here.
I'm here at the end of the council table, way in the distance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, these COVID rules are not very people friendly, are they?
No, it's quite strange, really, because I'm used to going to have a cup of tea and having a bit of a chat, but if that's not going to be quite so easy.
No, it's not. So welcome, Stuart. Thank you for joining us. And, you know, like I said, even though the circumstances mean that you're not able to come and join us and share this time with us and then have a cuppa, we didn't want to let this opportunity go by without saying a big thank you to you for your work at the Civic Centre, but also for the work and the commitment that you've given to this community over many, many years. So as most of you will know, David was a Manawatu District Councillor from October 2001 through to 2007. And he's been involved with the Civic Centre right from day one. He was part of the working group that was established in 2003, and that was to look at the options of how do we better manage the Fielding Civic Centre. So on the 8th of July 2004, David, along with Pat Snoxall, Janet Lockett-Kay, Frank Dew, Lindsay Taylor, Stuart Osborne and Tony Chapman were appointed as the founding trustees to the newly formed trust. And then David was appointed as the first chairperson of that trust. And the really good thing there is that he's held this position right up until his resignation on the 31st of January 2022. So that is an outstanding number of years of service. Welcome, Carla. See you there. Nice to have you with us. And I asked the team just to highlight some of the work that's been done at the Civic Centre over David's reign as the chairman. And these are just a few of the key ones. They completed the upgrade of the entrance foyer, the upgrade of the tiered seating, new portable chairs, portable staging, a commercial kitchen, the heating system, new lighting and sound system, ceiling insulation and new stage curtain, major upgrade of the dressing rooms, improvement to the heating system, replacement of the background curtains, improvements to the entrance at Stafford Street, the new external electronic signage, the upgrade of the toilets and providing 2 unisex accessible toilets and showers, and the upgrade of the bottom dressing room, new paint in the foyer and hallway, recarpeting the cedar room, stairway and foyer and back hallway as part of the major drainage and roofing project. So that is a pretty impressive list, and that's not by any means the full amount there. So David, on behalf of our community, we just want to say thank you for the commitment that you've given to the Civic Centre Trust over many years. And, you know, I know you've had your times of frustration and you've come to council frustrated and things haven't been happening fast enough, but good on you. We need people like you in our community that are passionate and committed to the cause. And as you know, that eventually we get there and we are making progress. We know that in the future, what happens to the Civic Centre is up in the air as part of our community facilities review, and we know that you will be watching with interest. But I also at this time want to thank you and Esme for the work that you've done for this community in the capacity as a volunteer. And, you know, I sat down and wrote a few, you know, your commitment to Rotary to all of the years that Fielding Promotion was operating. You chaired the Clock Tower project, the Millennium Party, involved in the setup of the Coach House, and then when it moved to South Street. The numerous heritage events over the years, you've been one of the leading volunteers, the farmers market, and many, many more activities and events that in this community, you've been there, rolled up your sleeves. Esme's been there beside you, and a number of fundraising activities that I recall that you've both been involved in and very successful. So, you know, and you did receive a community honour, both of you, in 2009. So our community had the opportunity then. And I see on that list there, the Great Home Giveaway, you know, the first big major promotion this community ever did. Incredibly successful. And you were involved in that one as well. So Rural Day, Settlers Day, Christmas Carnival, Fireworks Spectacular, Manawatu Garden Festival, and on it goes. So we just can't say thank you enough to both of you, but in particular, David, for your passion for this community. And I know in earlier years, you lived in the rural community, you were rural people, and but you understood the need for Fielding as the hub of this district to be vibrant and successful. And for that, we thank you. I first met David and Esme, I'd only just got married and had a job at Feltex, out at Kakariki, and everyone kept talking about mum and dad in the scour room, and I had no idea who they were, and it turned out mum and dad were David and Esme, who looked after people who got into mischief, who were, they helped them get back on track, and they often took people under their wing and helped them through whatever they were dealing with. So, you know, I just feel that this isn't enough to thank you both for what you've done, but we did want to record it today. And a special thanks to you. We do have a gift for you. We have a certificate of appreciation and some flowers. I will come and deliver those to you after council today. And so I'm just going to open it to anyone else who may wish to make a comment to say thank you. Councillor Short.
I can perhaps go back even earlier. I went to school with David and Esme's children, and I'd just like to acknowledge that their community service started right from the moment they were young adults, I think. Esme was even my netball coach. She had 3 sons, but she still offered to coach netball. And I actually remember the whole team fitting in your, was it a white Marina you had, Esme? And we drove to Martin in the days when there was no seatbelts in the back seat, and the whole team fitted in.
And we won, remember?
Yeah,
we won.
we were good. And also, I also remember Esme being camp mother. I can't remember which camp it was now, but I always know you've always had that ability to wrap your arms around people and care for them, both of you, so thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. Councillor Hadfield. Grant.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Look, I just think this is a fantastic example of community service, and it's an example and a lesson to successive generations on how to serve the community. So well done.
Thank you, Councillor Quarry. Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, congratulations to both of you. I feel disappointed that we have to do it in this fashion. I think you deserve something far greater than this, and it's disappointing not being able to look you in the face and shake your hand. So one day when we meet up, we'll do that. But thank you for your community service.
Absolutely, well said. Councillor Campbell. Stuart.
Yeah, look, I recall when I went into business in Fielding here 30 odd years ago now, David and Esme were running a business in town at the same time, and highly involved in business activities around town, and with Fielding Promotion, which kicked off a little bit after that. Since then, I don't think there's hardly been a community event where David and Esme have been running around in a yellow jacket or something, you know, organising proceedings. So look, I want to thank you both for everything you've done, particularly acknowledge the Civic Centre work you've done, David, over a long time, the whole time that the trust has been in place. And like Councillor Quarry, yeah, I wish I could shake your hand. So look, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you. So, so David, like, you know, Andrew summed it up really well. This hardly seems appropriate doing it via Zoom, but you may wish to say a few words.
Yeah, firstly, thank you very much for all the fantastic words of appreciation that you've given us, and also the presentation that you've got organised. I just thought I'd have a few, I have to read because I can't remember half the stuff that I'm supposed to. Anyhow, so I'm going to read a little bit of the stuff. Some of it is something you've already covered, but anyway, I'll crack on and see how we get on. Tell you, I've been on the trust for 17.5 years, and that doesn't take in the 3 years it took to convince the council to form a trust to manage the Civic Centre. So this is the end of a 20-year commitment to the Civic Centre for me. Back in the 1950s, that's a long time ago, my father was very involved in the Queen Carnival and raised, the Queen Carnival raised £26,000, which was half of the funds needed to build the Civic Centre. He was part of the Services Queen, the Queen Carnival, that won the carnival. I was about 12 years old. And then around in 1999 and 2001, the council put forward plans to sell the building as the cost of upgrading it was too much. It was around about $2 million from memory. So I stood for council in the idea of saving this the Civic Centre from within the council. After 2 years of pressure from users and having community meetings organised by Councillor Eric Linklater and myself, the council formed a group of interested community focused people to become trustees of the Civic Centre, and the trust was formed, as Helen was saying, on the 4th of July 2004. Now, I won't go through all the list of the because the trustees that were at that time, because Helen has already covered that. Perhaps I should, because there is quite a lot of effort being done by specific trustees. Both Pat Snoxall and he was the original chair, and Frank Dew, they were instrumental in raising community funds by directing and producing shows. We raised quite a lot of money to continue doing things for the community with those funds. Then there's Lindsay Taylor. He's our expert with all things electrical and lighting. He does volunteer electrical work for the centre even today. John Gregory is a councillor at the time of the formation, and he has brought his wide stage experience, and Tony Chapman brought his business advice and experience. Stuart Osborne, as I see, he's here on the Zoom, our present deputy chair, and he brings his professional ability, amazingly valuable ability to plan and draw up ideas for future development of the facility. And there's a lot of plans that are still being able to be looked at again in any changes that we might do in the future. And I've asked him, and he's happy to allow his name to be put forward as the new chairman if that comes about. There are two people who have replaced Pat and Frank, and they're Alan Williams, our star search organiser, and our experienced Johanna Wood, the CEO of Football New Zealand. And then, of course, there was me. As you can see, we have had a wide range of experience that we bring to the table each month. we have had some great managers over the years, and two of the outstanding ones, starting with Steve Paul, who really put us in the picture. There's a huge amount to do in the beginning of range storage, in designing of that sort of thing. He did a great job. And now, of course, Carla, who does a fantastic job of doing everything that's required, and she manages it as if she owns it herself. Great commitment from Carla. I must especially mention also David Young, and he just saves us heaps of money. Cannot overemphasize the value that this man has brought as our minute secretary, and his financial ability that we have relied on for years to present accounts for the auditor, as well as doing and helping applications for funding. So I've decided to resign for three reasons. One is I'm getting old. I'm 80 years old and my sight is failing. I can't read small writing, so I've blown all this up so that I can, it's a size that I can read. I feel the need for the trust to have some new blood and some younger, energetic, community-minded people to get involved. And I'm satisfied that I'm leaving knowing that the trust has got the centre in a better place than it was when I joined all those years ago. And I'm sure you'll go on doing a great job for the community. I have enjoyed working with you all for the last 17 years. We have achieved a great amount with our wide amount of experience and outside funding. Thanks for your support and positive attitude. I feel that we all should be very proud of ourselves. We have been a great team, and you will continue to do so with the injection of the new talent that the council has appointed. Thank you all for making my job a very rewarding one. The relationship that we have had with the council has been somewhat up and down, depending on the personalities around the council table and the various council staff that had been changed from time to time. But overall, we have been able to work with you all for a great amount of success. So the process of creating a trust to manage the running and upgrading of the centre has worked. I would like to thank you all for that. All that is left now is to turn over this page and wish you all the very best for the future, wherever it takes the Fielding Civic Centre Trust. But most of all, I would like to publicly thank Esme, my wife, who has helped me throughout all as a sounding board whenever I have needed one. And I'm sure she is more valuable than she realises. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Beautiful. Thank you. And I know that Ben, I see Ben's on our call. Ben is putting together a media release for us to acknowledge publicly the thank you that we've done today. So he may get in contact with you and some of those words that you've just read out to us. So, and you know, even though you're leaving the Civic Centre Trust, I know in the background you will be there, and I know you will be prodding us and no doubt phoning me up and going, what are you doing that for, or why? So we look forward to that. And yeah, and like we said, really unfortunate that we're not able to now go and share a cuppa with you. But I will call in later this afternoon and pass over the gift that we have from council. So yeah, just a final thank you. Can't thank you enough from the Manawatu district, our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll look forward to your afternoon visit. Very good.
Thanks, David. Cheers.
Bye.
Steve.
Okay, with that, we will take a break. And I need to formally close the council meeting, so I will do that. Thank you, and we will have a cup of tea. And come back to workshop in about 15 minutes.
Over here.